Tim, it's great to have you back on the channel. Really appreciate you joining me again. And hopefully you've had a little bit of time to recover from the championships. You were there covering it for Athletics Weekly. So it's good to get your perspective. So before I ask you a couple of interesting questions, maybe if you want to unpack, what was the greatest moment for you, the most standout thing from the championship? It could be a performance, maybe an interview you had, something you saw about Japan that really struck you and you wanted to think about it that way. Yeah.
Dwaine, firstly, great to be back here again. Wow, what a question. It's so difficult to unpack. I spent a few days in Japan actually before the championships began. Was lucky enough to go down to Kyoto, Osaka for one evening, which was a massive sensory overload down there. Went to Hiroshima for a day as well. I mean, as a country, I've never met more courteous, kind people. Everything's in order. When they're queuing up for the bullet train, they're queuing kind of one after the other, and they have little segments where they queue as well. You don't get that in London. That's very, very different. If anyone's ever experienced a train journey there, in terms of the actual athletics, you cannot go far from Mondo's 14th world record, I think it was. It was like a football celebration in the stadium. There was a sense of more when than if he was meant to do that on that night. He got very close, I think, on one of the attempts earlier on in that sequence, and it's not surprising. I think he can go to 6:33 next year. He's averaging, I think, 3 world records a year. I think he's got four so far this year, which is just extraordinary. And in terms of an interview, blimey, we got around, I'll say that much. We chatted to quite a few athletes. We were lucky enough, I was fortunate enough to actually get a one-to-one with Noah Lyles about 10 minutes before the championships began. And there's one thing that struck me in the interview. We chatted about the journey from when he first became world 200-meter champ back in Doha in 2019 to obviously kind of then he got the 4th title in Tokyo. And there were a few doubts, obviously, with Kenny and Letsile being the Olympic champion in the build-up to that, Kenny running well. But he said that I've never felt better going into a championships and everything was clicking. That's what he said. That was the phrase. And I just thought, yeah, the 100, it will be tight. The 200, I thought, yeah, you're the favourite. And then he produced that, 19.51 or something like that in the semi-final. That's the point where I think a lot of people went, yeah, okay, he's now the strong favourite for this final.
Yeah. No, Lyles is an interesting character. He really writes people in some different ways. I like him in terms of his always wanting to push the sport in the spotlight. That is something that he should get credit for. Sometimes his mouth is interesting for different reasons. Like I'm not sure you were following on that 100 meters when Oblique Seville didn't look so good in that opening round, and he was saying Oblique was panicking in the back, and it's a kind of an interesting thing. But he always talks the talk, I guess, and he backs it up. And that 4 world championship in the 200 meters, yeah, only Bolt, right? So he's in really elite category there. He's certainly stacking up the kind of records he's definitely, I don't know where people would rank him at the end of the day in terms of the very best 200 meters, but he's definitely top 3 right now, for sure. Only thing missing is those gold medals from the Olympics. Got to look at a home Olympics in a few years. I'm not sure where that might pan out for him, but yeah, interesting. Yeah.
That will be interesting, and a lot of athletes are actually asked about LA 2028 in the press conferences afterwards. I mean, all the American athletes were for obvious reasons, but Noah, that's a lot of pressure on him to get that gold medal in Los Angeles, and there will be a sense of, okay, this has to be your time, because then can Noah wait to get gold medal in Australia in 2032, unless he does Kellyanne Fraser-Price and has that kind of longevity. So a lot of people will be saying to Noah, this is he will understand that and know that as well, that LA 2028 potentially might be the only and last opportunity he gets to win the Olympic gold medal in the 200 meters.
I agree. I also think, I don't know your thoughts on this. I would say that going into LA, a double is not something you might want to do, because you think about it, there's people will be coming around. Maybe Gout might be good by that. Brian Level from Jamaica, I think, is a standout athlete there, and he will probably get better. I guess Kenny might be around. Let's Seal is very young too. So you start to ask yourself the question. By then, Noah is getting into the 30s. Do you really want to double? Can you do that double and successfully win that 200? Because for whatever it is, I don't necessarily think the 100 meter is always the blue ribbon event in track and field, but the 200 is his baby. And if he were to finish that career without a 200 meter goal at the Olympics, it's hard for me to believe that he wouldn't be disappointed with that.
I agree. I think it's something that bound to come into consideration at some point. You know, Noah never used to double. That has now changed. In Budapest, it was a case of him wanting to prove to himself that he could do that. And then he came away with 3 gold medals, and everyone went, okay, we understand where you are coming from now. So it will be interesting to see. My gut feeling is, I mean, it was how many years ahead? It was 3 years ahead. It's a long way, but my gut feeling is I would be surprised if he did all 3. But at the same time, an Olympics and home soil, it's very difficult to, to turn down an event in that sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. I guess let me ask about one more standout thing before we get into some Team GB stuff. And I want to talk about Amy Hunt, obviously, Hunter Bell, because we had spoken about that prior to the championships. The women's 400 meters. Could you understand that? I just never thought in my life it would take 40-something years. So this is something happening before you were born. And I was like a kid when we last saw women going sub 48 in a 400 meters. And to get 2 women to do this, and for Sydney McLaughlin to just focus on it and push boundaries, crazy. I was stunned. I was literally shaking after I watched that. There's different reactions. I spoke to a lot of people. I like, you're watching a performance, sometimes you jump, you cry, you're different emotions. But when I saw that 400 meters, I was just like, I couldn't process it. I knew it was coming in my mind, but I just never thought I would live to see the 47, and not only 1, but 2. How did you?
I think the first thing to say is that you're not the first person, Dwaine, to say a lot of things have happened before I've been born. I've had quite a lot in my kind of career life, however you put it, so far. That's been a phrase that has been synonymous with me kind of in the job, especially with so many athletics records going back to the 1980s and early 90s as well. Yeah, there was an audible gasp within the stadium in the tribune area when she ran that time. We all knew that it was likely after that semi-final appearance, actually in a way similar to what Noah did, where he laid such a big statement down in that semi-final. Obviously, in Noah's case, he couldn't replicate the semi-final time in the final. It was still good enough to win, of course. Sydney knew that she would even then have to take a chunk off her semi-final time. Was it 48.29, I think it was?
Yeah.
To actually get the gold medal, given how good Paulino and Nassar were. But I don't think people expected to see 2 sub 48 times, given there have been what two in history, I think, Marita Krachilova. So I think people thought that Sydney could do it. I don't think they believed that she would do it in Tokyo. I think if it came, I think they might have believed it could happen maybe in Budapest next year, or Beijing, or LA if she focused on the 400 meters then. But now you've obviously got the conversation: can she break Marita Cox's world record, which dates back to 1985? So you think on paper she can. Realistically, the training that Bobby Kersey and her were doing was to peak at that exact moment at the championships. They played it to a T. I think a lot of people thought, okay, well, she wasn't hitting those times in the summer. Can she replicate that? Well, we now know she can. So I think she will break the world record in the next year or 2 years, however long that may take. The conditions weren't the best that night. There was rain in the air. I mean, it was a very humid championships. We were sweating buckets. It was like working in a sauna, to be honest, and on some of the occasions. And it had rained that evening. and the track was a bit wet. And a lot of people that I spoke to in Tokyo said, well, okay, if Sydney is running 47.78 in those conditions, well, what can she run at her best if that was Prefontaine Classic at Hayward Field and the track and the conditions are, to a T, the best that she can get? So I think for anyone to break the world record, because Paulino potentially could go under that as well now, I think all three of them have to be in the same race for that to happen, for them to push each other. I don't think those sub 48 times in Tokyo would have happened if Paulino and Sydney weren't pushing each other down that home straight. But there was palpable shock when the times came on the clock, because then you look down the field and Van Beraning and the others, they weren't, they were still a way back, but they weren't tremendously far behind, and they still run 49.2, 49.3. That's how good that race was. So it was oh my god moments of the championship.
Yeah, everyone under 50 seconds. You answered a couple questions that I was going to ask. If I'm being honest with you, I never thought that I still would. I know I'm changing my mind, but I used to say it's impossible to break the women's 400-meter record. But no, I can't say that anymore, which is good and bad because of the history of some of those records, and we don't necessarily have to unpack that. But in the sense that it's taken 40 years for women to catch up on that level. And you kind of said it in a way which I think shouldn't go unnoticed in the sense of the nuance here. I want to bring in NASA as well, because the way in which the season set up, if you think about NASA early running those really 48 times in I think the DRC, and then in the Dominican Republic rather, and then in the Grand Slam, and then tackling back and forth with Paulino, and you getting Sydney coming on late at the US Championships, there's this kind of what's going on, and then there's that break to prepare for the championships. And I think you're right, without those three women, not necessarily only in the race, but the way in which the season kind of panned out may have set up clearly the greatest thing we've seen in a very long time. So
it was one of those races that it was a privilege to be in the stadium for it, to be honest. And I think a lot of people went home that night thinking the same. And we were next to the American journalists down in the mix zone. I was kind of pretty much next to Sydney when she did the interview with the media pool down there. And whether it's media training or not, I'm not sure, but she comes across as someone who you still believe there's a lot more in the tank there. That she said it wasn't the perfect race, and it could have been better. And if you're running that time and that's not the perfect race in those conditions, well, my God, you've got a lot more to give them.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I think Sydney's an unbelievable athlete. I remember seeing her when she was a kid in pen relays, and everybody knew then, and she went to, was it Rio as a 16-year-old or something like that? But it's unbelievable. Done everything you can do in the 400 hurdles. There are talks about should she try to see if she could do a 400-meter hurdle double. That seems kind of nuts to me. But you never know. Sydney pushes barriers. Potentially she could run 200 meters. She's so good that she can run everything from 100-meter hurdles all the way up. So maybe going to 800 is an interesting thing too.
So someone said to me in Tokyo, it's like she's trying to collect stones off the Avengers in that sense. It's kind of got that theme to it. She's not happy with just two. It'll be interesting to see if she sticks with the 400 meters now, whether she does that and never goes back to the 400-meter hurdles, or does she try to break the 50-second barrier in the 400-meter hurdles in her career at some point. And I think doing the 400 meters and potentially, putting, her toes into the two, and maybe even doing an 800 meters at some point in the next 2 or 3 years and getting that time down, that would help her both in the 400 meters and the 400-meter hurdles as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let me ask a couple because I don't want to keep it too long. So in terms of the sprints, we saw a brilliant performance from MJW, Jefferson-Wooden there, collecting all the medals, doing something that only Shelley and Fraser Price managed to do. Obviously, Shelley going out on her terms too, which is great for one of the great careers there. 100 meters, Jamaica going back to a place they haven't done in the men's since the retirement of Usain Bolt. Were you happy with the sprint performances? I guess Julian Alfred is the only kind of she picked up an injury there in the 100 and didn't feature in the 2. But your thoughts on the state of that and as a spectacle for what is the Blue Ribbon event in track and field?
Yeah, you mentioned at the start there, Dwaine, you're talking about interviews, for example, that were memorable. Yeah. We were actually at a Puma event with, it wasn't a one-to-one interview, but it was a kind of Q&A that Usain Bolt did in front of a big delegation at Puma House before the championships, I think on the 11th of September, so 2 days before the champs began. And he said that he thought that Kashane and Oblique didn't actually give a specific order, to be fair, could get 1-2 in the 100 meters. And I think a lot of people there thought, that hasn't happened for a long time, obviously, since Usain himself. So he said, I would love to present the gold medal. I actually don't know who presented the gold medal to Oblique.
I didn't see that either because they didn't show it on American TV.
Which would be interesting. But yeah, it's been a long time coming. I thought it would be Kashane 1, Noah 2, Oblique 3. I didn't expect Oblique to essentially leapfrog the two of them. But at the same time, I think for Jamaican sprinting, it's well overdue. They've had a long time seeing American athletes get the men's 100 meter medal at the Olympic Games and at World Championships. And for Oblique, he's still a young athlete. Kashane is still fairly young as well for a sprinter. So for those two, I think their ceiling is astronomical. I think next year you could easily see the two of them in really good conditions going 9.71, 9.72 if it came to it. The barrier will then be, can you get to the 9.6s and get anywhere near Usain's record in your career? But there is still time for that. In the women's sprinting, Melissa Jefferson-Wooden, it was the biggest, maybe Femke Bol in the 400 meter hurdles. It was the biggest. This is a certainty of what's going to happen. I don't think anyone expected her to not win the 100 meters. The 200 meters, I think, was tougher. Obviously, Julian getting an injury. I mean, Julian ran 21, I think, 0.7
in London,
I think, at the Diamond League. And if she ran that time, she still wouldn't have beaten Melissa Jefferson-Wooden in Tokyo, but I think it would have been a much more competitive race. So, I think as soon as Julian announced that she had an injury, the gold was almost a foregone conclusion. Obviously, Gabby Thomas wasn't at the World Championships as well. I will chat about Amy Hunt in a bit, but to see Amy get the silver, I thought she'd get bronze. But Sharika did not run as quickly as I thought she would have potentially. Then again, Sharika, I think she said it was her faithful medal, the bronze medal from that 200 meters, which shows that she's come a long way. And actually, from the injuries and the tough year that Sharika had last year, that medal, I think, meant a lot to her, and maybe even more than some of the others.
No, I think so. I think Jackson said that, and she said it to Jamaica TV and a lot of these things too, where I believe that medal is an important, because she could do it again, right? Because to come from being the favorite, probably would have gone into Paris after those great 2 years in Eugene and Budapest, flirting with the world record and just not getting it. Massive injury takes her out. At some point, an athlete needs to feel like they can do it again. And I thought she would have been the silver medal candidate after the semifinal going sub 22. It didn't happen. And it leads us to Amy Hunt. You talked about Amy Hunt. It's just a lovely athlete. I remember you saying it, and I couldn't really necessarily believe the words out of your mouth when we were speaking in the summer, when you were saying Amy actually believes that she has the formula to chase down the very best at some point. And I said, you look at Amy from British Championships and you see a talent there, but you didn't expect it to be a silver medal. Not in my mind right away, maybe a couple cycles down the road. Talk to me about Amy. And, I think you spoke to her afterwards too, I think, right? I think I caught a clip of that. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe.
It wasn't me after the final itself, that was a national newspaper kind of press that I think the attention had gone astronomical there.
Yeah.
But after the semi-finals, she actually ran quicker in the semi-finals than she did in the final itself. I think she ran 22.08, if I've got the maths right there, in the semi-finals, which actually put her second on the UK all-time list above Kathy Cook, who of course was this amazing 400-meter runner for Great Britain back in the 1980s. And Amy knows, and actually chatted to Amy's mum a few days later. We actually bumped each other at Tokyo Tower, would you believe, of all the places. The last kind of touristy thing that I saw before flying back to London. And she mentioned that, the family know that there are a lot of comparisons between her and Kathy Cook as well. Yeah, with Amy, extraordinary. She's someone who obviously had a world under-18 record in the 200 meters, went to Cambridge. Very difficult to balance both of those up when you're studying at one of the top universities, not just in the UK, but in the world. Then had quite a serious amount of injuries kind of during a period as well. Has come back from all of that, is now training out in Italy under Marco Aurel, who has done wonders for Amy out there. The lifestyle suits her. I think the diet out there is quite healthy as well, and she's just to pardon the pun, flown in the last year, especially her top end speed. The interview that she did, actually, it was after the London Diamond League, where she said to us at AW, "I think I can run down. I know how to run down the likes of Julian Alfred and people like Sharika Jackson." And a lot of people went, "Oh, hold on a minute, that's quite a big statement." Amy actually in Tokyo said to me off camera that had blown up quite a bit. And she'd actually received quite a few messages from that saying, "We, think that you could do it, but you've obviously got to prove it on the track." And my God, did she? I mean, to run that time in the semi-finals made me think, okay, this medal, it's hers to lose, essentially, in the final. Again, I thought it'd be bronze.
Right.
I did not think that Sharika, I think it was 22.18, but again, that's what Sharika is at the minute, and Sharika was delighted with that. So that's fantastic for Sharika. But for Amy to get silver, and even though it was like 22.14 against 22.18, you've still got to run down Sharika Jackson. And mentally, for any athlete of any era, that is going to be really difficult, because Sharika's the second on the 200-meter all-time list, and has a lot of gold medals to her name. So delighted for Amy. She, as a person, is genuinely so down to earth, and I think could be an absolute superstar for British sport in the next couple of years. Her ceiling is unbelievably high.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess we will be seeing her this weekend, right? Is she at Athlos, right? I think, is she there?
I think so. Yeah, I believe
I
so.
believe so, yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
I'll have to check.
If conditions are good there,
yeah,
could she run sub 22? It would not surprise me one bit.
Right. Assuming they're all training still, right? I've been seeing a lot of they're
There
going
is
all
that
over the
part,
place.
yeah. There is that part as well.
Yeah, but yeah. No, another British athlete that really did well was Hunter Bell. Obviously, great team. The 800 meters, I got to be honest with you, ridiculous. Championship record against, I guess, two of Jamila's record going in the same championship, the 400 and the 800 meters. I thought it was Keely when we saw Keely when she came out in the summer, we were like, it's over. I guess it wasn't over. And I thought maybe I just was I put it in my predictions. I did everything, even on the World Athletics play predictions you did. I still had Hunter Bell on the podium over the likes of Averu from Switzerland and others. But to run 154 and to beat Keely, and obviously we must give credit to the Kenyans. The Kenyans overall they dominated all the distances on the women's side, racking up all these gold medals. But did you think she would run that fast, even to beat Hutchinson? Your thoughts on Hunter Bell? And clearly, to make that decision is a big one. We must not forget she is the Paris 1500 meter medalist. Yeah. So to drop down is a statement, right?
I thought that, I mean, firstly, it's extraordinary that both Georgia Hunter-Bell and Keely Hodgkinson, who are from the same training group,
Right.
both made the world podium, which says a lot about the work that both Trevor Painter and Jenny Meadows have done. And you have to give a big shout out to them, the work that they put behind the scenes, because that was a lot of work with Keely, especially to get her from where she was with the injuries at the start of the year and the setbacks to then get her a medal as well. But I didn't see Georgia beating Keely. And I think a lot of people were thinking the same, to be honest. It was a weird race. It was one of those races where, I mean, Keely said that it wasn't totally off-putting, kind of the battle with Mary Mora, but you got an idea that maybe there were tactics involved. I don't know. A lot of people think that there were, a lot of people think that there weren't. Realistically, what do I think? There might have been, but at the same time, I think realistically, Adira was in the kind of shape regardless. I mean, that semi-final time, 1:56, I think she ran. Right. We actually did pieces to cameras outside the previews outside the stadium every day. And in the predictions or previews that I was giving before the 800 meters that night, I went, well, it's Keely's essentially to lose in terms of the time. But you've got to watch out for Lily and Adira, because that semi-final performance was unbelievable. And I'm not surprised she ran 1:54.6, I think it was. Which
1:54.62.
It's unbelievable. It wasn't the case that Georgia and Keely ran badly. Keely, that's, I think, her third quickest time ever. Yeah. And Georgia, knocked over half a second off her personal best. Yeah. It was just an extraordinary race. And I do think, Keely will end up getting a gold medal in the World Championships at some point. She's too good not to get that. Right. But Georgia, I think it vindicated her decision to go to the 800 meters, because yes, Diribi Wadheji with the AIU investigation was suspended from the championships. Georgia actually did say in the interview in the mix zone after her heat that potentially, if that decision was made, weeks before, that she could have doubled up. I think it was the best decision that she just did the 800 meters, and the fact that she's now got a world 800 meter silver medal and a bronze medal in the 1500 at the Olympics. The foundations for her career now are just fantastic. And that one of the quotes of the championships was from Georgia, that just because you're in your 30s, and you've seen it with Shelly Ann and Faith Kipyegon, you can still perform to your best. And I think it does lend itself more so to the middle distances and to the longer distances in that sense on the track. And it would not surprise me if Georgia was to get a gold medal at a European Championships or Commonwealth Games next year. She's right. That good.
Yeah, I know it is, Estella. Let me just ask you, what do you make of the 800 meters in general? Because the times are crazy on both men and women. Like, look at this final. It's Jessica Hull from 1:57.30, last place in a final. It's like, and on the men's side too, we've now seen like 1:42s for fun from how many guys. It's, how do we process this? I know some people are saying it's the bicarb, it's the sports science, it's this, but the times have just went off in ways that we've just, I don't know what to say.
I probably think, the spikes are also mentioned, I guess, as well. Yeah. It's probably a combination, in all honesty. And I think any sport generically in any event will have peaks and troughs, that you'll get a generation of athletes at the same time who are a lot better than the previous generation were. In a weird way, you can't still say that yet in both, because David Rudisha and Krejcilova hold the world records in the respective events still. But at the same time, the strength in depth now is on another level. And while, in David Rudisha, you had a guy running 1:40.91, you've now got 5 guys in the 800 meters who can, that final in the Tokyo final, I could be wrong. I think did every single athlete run sub 1:43?
I think so. Yeah.
Something like that. But you've now got 5 guys essentially who can run sub 1:42 in races. It's actually quite scary. I think it's more. If I was to make a prediction now, I would say the women's 800-meter world record will go before the men's.
Mm,
I genuinely think that, and the reason for that is that I do think the gap to 140.91 with the men, that is still a margin to get in a race. In the women's events, I think if one of them, I think if the likes of Hodgkinson and if Adira, if her ceiling is even higher, I think Hodgkinson and her mentality and Adira, the two of them potentially, if that
yeah.
turns into any kind of rivalry which pushes that kind of event on the women's side, those two can push each other towards the world record. I think next year you'll see both of them running 153,
Mm.
probably higher, but 153.28. It's tough. Both world records are tough, and that's why they've lasted for a long time. But
Yeah.
if I was to say which one goes first, after Tokyo, before Tokyo, I would have said the men's one. Now I'm more leaning towards the women's one, and I never thought I would say that.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, no, we'll see. I mean, there's so many athletes that we thought would have done well that just didn't, like Satu Diguma there from Ethiopia, even Segadiso there dropping out. So I think this a space where I would say the average times are going to improve in some ways, and at the elite end of it too, we might get to those world records. I'm here for it. I hope it happens. I think sports, you need that at times where you bring that level of excitement. Let me get a couple more before I get you out of here, because I know this has been going a long time. Thoughts on Team GB 4x1? Because I was somewhat disappointed in the women's 4x1 in particular, and many people are. I don't know if this is the right way to put it, are blaming maybe the lineup. Is it a Daryl? Should we have anchored? You guys should have anchored with someone else other than Daryl. Is that a thing? And then maybe finally on, I think Harry Poole in the BBC said first time no gold medal for Team GB in 20 years. Where did it go wrong? Something like that, if I'm paraphrasing. Is it really a crisis moment, or are they just overreacting on? I'm not saying he is, but is there a sentiment that there may be a bit of overreaction there?
Well, I was actually sitting pretty much next to Harry in the Tribune in Tokyo. So we chatted a lot about kind of Great Britain's, I guess, the health of athletics, if you were to call it that. I'll probably take the first one first. In terms of the relays, I thought the women could have actually got the gold medal. I genuinely thought that if they ran, they ran very well in London at the Diamond League and the four there. And they were the four of Asher Smith and Amy Hunt and Desiree Henry and Daryl Neater. And they ran sub 42 seconds at the London Diamond League.
Yeah.
Now, that performance made everyone go, okay, well, if the Americans are not in top form, and if the Jamaicans are not in top form, can Great Britain get near the top of the podium? I don't think what anyone was counting in Tokyo was for Germany to run that well. I'm not sure anyone thought that would happen on the map. But at the same time, yeah, we had five medals from the relays. We were the only country at the Paris Olympics to get 5 from 5 in the two women's relays, the two men's, and the mixed 4x4, and we got no medals at all in Tokyo. So there were bound to be questions asked in the men's 4x1. Again, similarly to the Jamaicans, relay baton drop. Can you do much about that? But even if the guys were fully fit, the global competition now in relays is fierce. And I think the issue that Great Britain has in terms of funding is that the funding is based off the medals. Now, we've always had a very good relay cohort. We've had very good 400-meter runners. We've had very good sprinters. And combined, the likelihood is the strength in depth will actually equal a medal. And at the Olympics, it showed. But other countries are now realizing that a lot of funding comes from relays. So a lot of countries now are investing. And a lot of countries, I have to say, in Africa and Europe, especially, You see Botswana in the men's 4x4. They had a national holiday off the back of it. That was extraordinary. So a lot of countries are realizing the relays now are prime opportunities for medals, for funding, for global recognition in athletics, just outside of the individual competition. And I don't think it's the case that GB's runners have gone backwards. I mean, yes, they could have made better decisions. Amber Ranning, I think, could have been put into an earlier round in the women's 4x4 to help them get through. Maybe that was a complacency, issue there, thinking that, those girls were good enough to get through. Then again, we have 4 very strong girls. And I think Greg Rutherford on the BBC made this point, that he said that he thought that they were good enough to get through their heats. Well, I mean, the conditions were mentioned, the heat, the humidity, it was really tough. But at the same time, you do have to look at 5 out of 5 from Paris and 0 out of 5 from Tokyo. GB were 21st in the medal table. Right. And no one from UK athletics would have liked GB to be in that position at the end of the championships. I mean, yes, Molly Caudry, Josh Kerr injured. Jake Whiteman was that far away from a second gold medal. So I wouldn't say, I mean, I think the event the championships that Harry was alluding to was Paris in 2003. That was the last time Great Britain didn't get a gold medal at a World Championships. In Helsinki, it was one. It was Paula Radcliffe there. I think the strength in depth is a lot better than it was at those championships. And if you look at the placings table, GB, I think, were 3rd or 4th. When you look at the 4ths and the 5ths and the 6th and the 7th and the 8th places, which says to me that there is strength in depth. I would start to worry if that was replicated in Budapest, potentially, and then Beijing, because obviously the significant funding will come from UK sport, and that will be around the LA 2028 Olympic cycle. So I know the funding's already been set for the 4 years in the cycle, and there has been a drop in funding, to be fair, from UK sport to UK athletics for this Olympic cycle, and that was well documented last year. But in terms of the actual statistics on a medal table, I would probably think that people, I wouldn't say should start panicking, but I think having Tokyo, Paris was very, very good in the sense that I think Tokyo can almost be excused in a way that it gives a bit of leeway ahead of Budapest next year. And of course, we have 2 home championships. We have a European Championships and a Commonwealth Games as well. Different, the Americans aren't there for those. So that will be interesting to see how athletes get on at those 2 championships. But Budapest, when you are up against the Americans, that will be interesting.
Yeah. No, I think you've offered a nuanced angle on it, because sometimes it's easy to just look at the table and think you're in real crisis. But at the same time, at the end of the day, it's the medals that count. And if you're not on it, then people will ask questions. Do you think people will get fired for this?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I would be surprised, but I don't know. That's pretty my opinion on it, to be honest.
Yeah, I get. Who's the coach? Was it Paula Dunn or so? Is it maybe? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jack Buckner's the kind of the CEO of the organization, and then you've got relay coaches in there. Paula Dunn was out there in Tokyo as well. Kind of Ian Beattie's a higher kind of representative within that. So, yeah. Look, there will be questions asked, and rightly so. But I do think that, given the circumstances in the background that they are having to face in terms of funding cuts from UK sport for this Olympic cycle, and also I think because Paris did go quite well, I think there will be a bit of leeway. Now, if Budapest replicates Tokyo, that's when significant questions will be asked. But I think they've probably got, I think Budapest, that's the one that I think people will be looking at now.
Cool. Yeah, no, we'll see. And I will say also on the relay side, just generally, because I think this is a thing that even Jamaica and other countries have to take note, is that the evolution of this world relays has given a lot of these countries that we may not always look at to focus on relays, because and I think Jamaica has been in crisis in the last couple of world relays and struggling to get back where they thought they would always be. So it's something that, especially when you think about the bigger nations and with a larger pool of athletes, sometimes it's harder to get a team going, right? You just don't know how it works. But then if you have smaller countries, they can look and say, we have this 4 or this 6 and it would probably won't change, and we can cycle them. We have the camps, we go to the world relays, perform well, come to a championship, and countries are coming to championships better prepared for relays than we've ever seen before. Just the qualifications become even difficult now. So I don't know if that's something to look at. Yeah,
it's a really good point. I think the world relays has also given countries in Africa and Europe, continental Europe, and to be fair, and the Caribbean, a chance to present themselves in a big way on a global stage. And yes, I mean, historically, the US, Jamaica, Great Britain have always tended to, dominated the relays. I think that monopoly will start to end. I mean, yes, the US and Jamaica, I think, are that good, to be fair, that a lot of the time that they are still at the forefront of the sprints, if they don't drop the baton, safe to say. But at the same time, I mean, you look at, again, Botswana. That was unbelievable. Pretty arguably the women's the men's marathon, but if you going down to like that, but if you're looking at a race of the championships, that was just with South Africa, the US, Botswana on the line like that. That was unbelievable. And what that did, I think, you've got Gaborone hosting the World Relays next year. It would not surprise me off the back of that you get sellout crowds there. And I think for the sport to grow globally in Africa, and I think naturally there will be a World Championships in Africa at some point in the future, probably in the 2030s, if I had to put money on it. That's only going to do, countries like Botswana and South Africa and Kenya well when it serves those events.
No, for sure. Yeah. We could talk for hours, Tim, but I won't do that. Thanks so much as usual for coming on, and this has been great.